Good morning, English 1101 class. It's so great to be back here. We're starting Unit 6 this week, which is hard to believe. And please ignore I sent a sort of an email to one of my other sections. It's actually a virtual class session, so if you see that in your inbox, just ignore it. I sent it to the wrong section. But welcome this morning to Unit 6. A few notes on Unit 5, which was a real success, I think. I was really appreciative of how you contributed to the collaborative reading assignment that asks you to use the Vocaroo, the sort of voice recorder, for your responses to choosing one of these three essays here. Growing up as a brown girl, to the Latinos who can't speak Spanish, and too Latina to be black, too black to be Latina. And I just wanted to kind of fill out our final sort of unit where you turned in your second cultural analysis essays, because this sort of writing from the Huffington Post, these sort of set of reflections, I think really shows what you can do with an autoethnography, how you can bring to light some of the cultural issues and problems, and how specific people feel and respond to those, respond to that particular kind of emotion or that kind of to that kind of experience. And so thank you so much. I'm not haven't gone through all of them yet. I've been kind of reading through your essay twos and also reading through or listening to your Vocaroo recordings. But thank you so much for, responding to each other and to providing such really thoughtful reflections on this on the various essays. Some of you responded to a specific essay that I try to keep all the essays that for one particular title with that response. So I might have moved your Vocaroo response depending upon which essay you were reflecting on. So you might see that have been moved a little bit in that document. But I'm almost through listening to all of them, and I will, input your grades and feedback soon. So thank you for being patient. Unit 6 is going to be really exciting because we're moving from sort of the research of the self next to the research of sort of primary source material out to secondary source research. And secondary sources are sources that interpret the primary sources. So they're books that talk about specific events. They can be journal articles. They can be reflections. They're going to encompass anything that interprets a primary event. And so secondary source materials are probably what you're most familiar with in terms of like researching, things that you'll look for in the COD library databases, in the card catalog. All of those things include secondary source materials, things that you'll check out, things that you'll download from JSTOR or Academic Search Complete. But what I'd like you to do this week is spend a little bit of time, it's a little bit lengthy, a 30-minute sort of tutorial on database searching, specifically at COD. And I think it's really important that you take the time to do this because all libraries are very different in terms of how to search and the best strategies for searching. And since we can't have like a live session with the librarian, Jason Ertz, who's the head librarian at COD Library, has made us these recordings, which will help you navigate the databases, because this week's goal is to come across one secondary source, a really strong secondary source that talks about or considers your cultural issue. And so what will that look like? So looking through this 30-minute tutorial will help you start to think about what a secondary source could be, a possibility for your particular issue, which is going to, of course, build from your autoethnography and your cultural analysis. So the issue could be, for example, thinking about colorism, the sort of tendency for people to value lighter skin over darker skin, and how someone feels about that and how they're treated as a result of that. And so that's something that you might look into if that was your particular cultural issue. I'd also like you to watch this video on Google Tips, because a lot of times we're doing research initially even on Google, which is fine. Getting some initial feedback, doing some initial research is what it's called, is really helpful. And what are some ways that we can make Google work even better for us using specific search terms or combinations of search terms? So the homework for this week, after you start to think a little bit more about research and complete those two videos, taking in some of the information and becoming more familiar with the COD databases, is to then think about creating a discussion board post and a collaborative reading document. Those are the two things that we're going to be working on this week. So this week, as I mentioned, you'll be locating one secondary source that focuses on your cultural issue, a book, a journal, a chapter from a book. And to begin this process, I would like you to schedule a research with a librarian appointment and meet with a COD librarian virtually, which is really easy to do. All you have to do is create an appointment by clicking here, and it'll open up a tab. I think they're in 15-minute increments. You'll click on Make an Appointment, and you want to see a reference librarian. And the reference librarian is going to do something like walk you through the steps of finding a secondary source that's related to your cultural issue. And some of the meeting with the librarian might just be narrowing down the search terms for what your cultural issue is. Maybe you're still trying to figure out what exactly can I say or put a finger on in terms of my cultural issue. How does that look when I'm trying to search terms for that particular idea or experience? What kinds of material would exist for that kind of cultural issue even? And so you'll see that there's lots and lots of time slots all throughout the week. And so I would like you very much to make sure to schedule a research with the librarian appointment at some point during this week. So if I were to research the language gap for Latinx students in elementary school, I would collect all sources in books and journals that focus this topic in some way. So here's an example of what these sources might look like. And here's like an academic book that would focus this particular issue. So issues in Latino education, class, race, and the politics of academic success. And then I'd go through the contents, and of course I wouldn't read the whole book. I might look at the introduction and then skim through and see what particular chapter is of interest to me, which one speaks most to my own cultural issue and experience, and what's something that I'd like to learn more about. So then I'd like you to, after meeting with a librarian, there's one other journal article here. So a book source or a journal article source is fine. You can include both, but I'm actually only asking that you find one this week. Here's how the word gap argument negatively impacts young children of Latinx immigrants, conceptualization of learning. So that's kind of a lot of words, a lot of language here. I gave you a nice kind of chart here that describes how books are a little bit different in terms of providing information than journal articles are. What can you expect from a book, and what should you expect from an academic journal article, a newspaper, or a magazine even? So how are they different, and what to expect when you're examining those pieces of evidence? After meeting with your librarian, build out another Google Site page. So this one, of course, is going to be Unit 6. And I want you to use that page to describe one relevant secondary source, either a book, a journal article written in the last 5 years. And after reading this source, a chapter in a book or a full journal article, I'd like you to complete the following note-taking template and include the name of your reference librarian and date of your meeting on that Google Site page as well. So you'll have 3 things. You'll have the article or the chapter, a link to it on your Google site. You'll also have this note-taking academic articles page and the name of your reference librarian and date of your meeting. And so this note-taking chart is just a way to help focus your reading. We talk about reading purposefully. How do we read through these sort of scholarly articles? And here's just a nice template that kind of gives you ideas about how to, what is the background for this particular chapter or article? What methods or nature of the study exist? What are the results or what are the findings? What's the sort of argument behind this chapter or journal? What's most striking about the evidence that this particular author includes? Again, we're going back to our course concepts, the sort of course objectives, and thinking about rhetorical situations and discourse communities. That's sort of what these questions are pushing you towards. So again, your Unit 5, it should say Unit 6 library appointment and secondary source is due on Friday. You do not have to worry about adding any replies this week. So you have the whole week to complete and upload this activity by just Friday. The only thing that you have to worry about completing on Wednesday this week is the collaborative reading, which I found a recent article. It's going to be published in the Best American Travel Writing 2020. It's called Vacation Memories Marred by the Indelible Stain of Racism. And this will appear in the collection, The Best American Travel Writing for 2020. As you read this article, think about how Tian moves from one, experiencing the cultural issue of racism, which is kind of what you've described in your autoethnography as a cultural issue, then describe the implications of this experience is kind of what you've done in your cultural analysis with your primary source. And then 3, advocates for change, which is sort of what this final part, this final 2 weeks of class are going to push onto you. These are the same moves you will make in your own final advocacy presentations. So by Wednesday, after you kind of read through this document here, this exciting essay, what I'd like you to do is, sorry, I'm going back, leave just one comment that locates either an emotional appeal, something that stirs our emotions or reminds us of deeply held values, otherwise known as ethos, or an ethical appeal. I'm sorry, that's pathos, an ethical appeal which supports the credibility, moral character, and goodwill of the argument's creator. Is the character trustworthy? What is the creator of the argument doing to show that he or she is knowledgeable and credible about the subject? Or identify a logical appeal that's often viewed as, especially trustworthy. What is the source of the logic? What kinds of evidence does the author use? Are all terms defined clearly? Has the logical evidence presented been taken out of context? Explain why your selection fits one of these categorizations. So again, you're going to go through the article and think about how is the argument put together? Does it rely heavily on pathos or the emotional appeal? Does it rely heavily on the ethical appeal or the ethos, or the logos, the logical appeal, the kinds of evidence that are incorporated? I hope you enjoy this essay. I hope that it's sort of a fun read for you. And then by Friday, just please reply to one student comment. Just go back to the document. Again, we learn more by rereading and revisiting something than just by skimming something and leaving it. It's great to always practice returning to something, especially for class, returning to a reading, returning to the research. So thank you. I did post our sort of final project for the class. I don't want to get into it too much. I'm not going to explain it in this introductory unit 6 video, but I will post soon more information about your final advocacy presentation, which I don't want you to be too worried about. It's really just sort of a narrated PowerPoint. It kind of moves us through the beginnings of this class and your cultural issue outward towards what kind of potential research might look like in this area of study. So I'm going to, I have the sort of advocacy presentation prompt here if you want to look at it. But again, I will keep you abreast of all of the sort of things you'll need to know for that final presentation, which isn't due for a couple weeks. So I hope you have a great time during week 6 and engaging in some very initial research on your topic. And I'm looking forward to getting back to you on your responses to those autoethnographies that you read and recorded your voices to from last week. I hope you have a fantastic week 6. Please reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will look forward to talking to you, responding to you in Blackboard. Thanks so much for listening.